Hello my fiery friends, the Infernoman here with our latest budget deck tech for you today. And for today's deck tech, we're going to be covering Maestros Tokens. That's right, we're going to be jumping right into the Explorer format and starting off with our first budget deck tech that's only going to cost you 5 rares and 3 mythics to build. For those of you who are new to the channel, here's how we explain the deck. First off, we will cover the creatures in the deck first, then we will go over the non-creature spells, we'll then cover the land base, we'll then explain the sideboard, and then have a couple matches against Sparky to show you how the deck is meant to be played. If you are a fan of budget deck techs, or just like enjoying jank, fun videos, please make sure to give a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to see all the deck techs, booster pack openings, and so much more on the channel. For all the support that you provide by doing just those simple actions for me, I really would appreciate it. But enough of me shilling my channel, let's go ahead and dive right in. To begin, we have 12 creatures in the deck, which is a very small amount, but they all provide a very important thing and the whole reason why we're doing this. Young Pyromancer, Sideboard Witch, and Puppet Stitcher all create tokens whenever we cast instant or sorcery spells. So that's basically how we're going to try to create our line of defense, going wide with all these tokens. Pyromancer creates 1/1 red elemental creatures, Sideboard Witch creates 1/1 pests, and Puppet Stitcher creates 2/2 black zombie creature tokens with Decayed. However, if we can get enough tokens out with all of our creatures, then Puppet Stitcher can flip into Puppet Factory, making all of our tokens much stronger as 3/3s that don't have any other abilities. Keep in mind, however, that sometimes you might want to have your pests die to gain life if some matches go a little bit long and we need to try to grind out a victory or at least maintain stability, but that's basically going to be all dependent on how you read your situation. As far as our final creature, 2 copies of Witty Roastmaster from our Streets of New Capenna. What's sweet about this is whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, we get to ping our opponent for 1 point of damage. That may not seem like much if you can only get 1 or 2 of these out, but keep in mind that again, you want to try to flood the board as fast as possible and then try to close out the game, but we will have a couple other cards that can help us get closer to victory in case the board gets gummed up on our opponent's side. We're going to be rolling with 28 non-creature spells, all instants and sorceries, and they all provide a lot of synergy with how our deck is meant to be run. Considers for your card draw, Village Rites can also help us out with card draw and also sacking using one of our tokens. I know some people may argue the Deadly Dispute may actually be better than this, but keep in mind that we're trying to have a very low to the ground mana curve, so we want to try to utilize instead Village Rites, and trust me, that 1 extra mana we can use for something else such as a Slip Out the Back, Fatal Push, or Consider may help us generate a few more extra tokens that we may need. Speaking of that, Fatal Push, very synergistic in this deck. It destroys a creature with a mana value of 2 or less, but most likely it's going to be hitting for 4 or less because we have a lot of sacking in this deck. Use your Slip Out the Backs to protect your token producers. Use your Heartfires if you have to get rid of a creature, but most likely you might be better off just burning out our opponent and closing out the game. Expressive Iteration can just help us get through more of our cards that we need to and filter out whatever we need to score to get our game plan rolling. And of course, Maestro's Charm, very flexible, an amazing card, love it. Helps us burn out our opponent with Heartfire if we need to, can deal some damage to a creature or planeswalker, and again, if we are drawing empty, just like Expressive Iteration, just helps us filter out to get what we need in order to keep the game plan rolling. Real quick before we continue on, first day of class, 1 copy of it. However, we aren't using the learn part of the portion of this. Instead, we want to try to tackle the major reason why you would play this card, which is whenever a creature enters the battlefield under control this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it and it gains haste until end of turn. So imagine a scenario where we can at least get 2 or 3 extra cards after we play first day of class to go off, and then if we already have a couple extra token producers, the amount of tokens you can make with the first day of class, then creating a bunch of hasty, more stronger creatures can help us also close out the game as we go wide. For your land base, we're going to be utilizing 20 lands total in the deck, and because we are a tricolor deck, it's going to be a little trickier than normal to maintain a budget, but we will do what we can and work with what we got. In our case, we'll have 3 islands, 3 swamps, and 3 mountains, all equal across the board. Your 2 rares are going to be the Xander's Lounge, which is a great card. Get it down in the early game, or if you do get it in the late game, it's sweet because you can still cycle it away to keep drawing into more action. Field of Ruin itself is going to just help us just pick off any of those creature lands that we have to deal with in the format. Maestros Theater, it's our budget option. You can also use if you really need to Evolving Wilds, but the only reason why you want Maestros Theater is also to trigger off Fatal Push. And Tramway Station with Waterfront District, we don't unfortunately have a Is It version of any of these cards, but that's not a big deal because we'll just utilize Swiftwater Cliffs. Those extra life gain that this and Maestros Theater have may not seem like much, but can also help us ensure that we can just maintain stability a little bit longer. But really quick, going over the Tramway Station and Waterfront District, the reason why these are pretty awesome, at least in this deck, is if the game keeps going long, you can still sack them each to keep drawing a card and hopefully get, again, some action going, similar to your Xander's Lounge if you get it in the late game. For your sideboard, again, it's going to be mostly a mix of things. We're going to try to stick to as much of our sorceries and instants as possible, with the exception, of course, of our also go-to favorite. Soul Guide Lantern is just awesome. I can't stress enough. If you've seen enough of my videos, I can't gush enough about Soul Guide Lantern as graveyard hate. Use Duresses, of course, for against the control matchup, and as well as your Spell Pierces. Again, we're low to the ground, so this is why we're utilizing this as our counterspell option. And then single copies of each of these types of removal or tempo effects just to maintain our control over the board, really depending on what our opponent's dealing with. Against red or green, your Ether Gust, Feed the Swarm can destroy a creature, but mostly we're using it for chant removal. Similar to a Braid, same thing, destroys a creature, but most likely we're going to use it to destroy an artifact. Noxious Grasp just picks off another green or white specific target. And of course a Fry that can't be countered, same thing, also to destroy a creature or planeswalker if we need to in a specific color. But otherwise, that's mostly it for your sideboard. I mean, I can't stress this enough, always adjust based on what's going on in the meta. And mostly this is just a sample of what I would recommend overall. You might want to tweak any of these single copy cards just in case, depending on, again, what is going on in the meta. Okay, everybody, here we go. This is going to be Maestros Tokens on a budget fighting against Sparky. So again, your game plan right now is you want to have one of your payoffs in your hand. Make sure, again, you have a couple of lands. We don't really have the lands we need for this, but we'll make it work with what we got. We have a couple of other cards that can help us draw into what we need, so let's keep what we have. Okay, so Maestro's Theater. Automatically sacks itself. We get to search for a land. Let's see, so based on what we have right now in our hand, we're probably going to want a blue source. So get the blue source of the island. This is that way we get the Puppet Stitcher out on time. Okay, Sparky puts out their card. All right, so we got our Xander's Lounge, which is great. So we'll put this down now. Again, nothing else you can do right now. You're just going to have to build up your board for the time being. Place a generic creature, which is fine. Goes to our turn. All right, and we got the Sedgemoor Witch too. This is excellent. Okay, so you have a couple options here depending on what your opponent is playing. So in this case, since they're playing white, let's go with Puppet Stitcher now. Alright, the creature comes down, they're tapped out. We can put down now the Sedgemoor Witch, but just be careful when you do this. And the main reason why I say that is because if your opponent is untapped, if they have counterspells, removal, you want to try to be a little bit more conservative with what creatures you come out. Even though you can make a ton of tokens off of this, you got to make sure that you have a backup plan. Because if you get blown out, you're going to be sitting there doing absolutely nothing for a little bit. Pacifism. Okay. So they're probably going to pay the ward cost, which 3, so they lose 3 life. Our witch can no longer attack or defend, but that's actually not a big deal for us. Mainly just because we just need the tokens off of the witch. They go attacking. We'll obviously take the damage. Down to 18. And our turn. Okay. Alright, so our land drops are really helping us out here. So before we put down the swamp, let's actually do Expressive Iteration. We now get to trigger off all of our tokens. Okay. Okay, 2 tokens. Okay, so ooh, we can get really greedy here with the Young Pyromancer. So I think, okay. For demonstration purposes, this is where things are going to get pretty wild. No attacks. Normally, I would have probably played the Consider. Oh, actually, we got another Consider right here. Okay, that works out. Okay, so I know it was a little weird for me to toss out the Consider, but considering for demonstration purposes, I want to show you mostly how the maximum amount of tokens you can get off of this. Okay, so Consider. Trigger all 3 at once. Okay, tokens. With 1 white. Okay, oh, perfect. Witty Roastmaster. This is what we need too. Okay, I think we can actually pull off here the burn plan and the go wide strategy. So, again, under normal circumstances, you could probably want to start getting into your attacks and chump blocking when you can. For now, we're just going to keep what we got. Okay, Sparky's out of cards. Okay, now you get to see the potential of where this deck is going to go off if everything falls into place. They go swinging. We will not block because we can afford the damage. So we go down to 11. That's a turn. Okay, opposite turn now can flip. We transform. Notice now all of your tokens are now 3/3s. We have Village Rights. We have Heartfire. We can close out this game pretty much right here, right now. So let's just do this. Okay, Village Rights. We will sack a pest. This triggers off the Witch and the Pyromancer. We make some more tokens. We ping Sparky. Nice. They're down to 15. Draw 2 cards. Okay, we can really go off here. All right. Consider. More tokens. Okay, here we go. Yes. All right. Put the Maestros there is the graveyard. Come on. And more. Okay, we got more card draw. This is great. Okay, Swiftwater Cliffs gave his life. Not that we really need that. All right, and then, well, how do we want to do this? Let's just go big swing, and then whatever damage you have left over, you can then Heartfire to close out this game right here now. Okay, so slip out the back on the Witch. So that triggers beforehand, before it phases out, which is great. We got our trigger still. Ping. Phase out. Ping. And then our final part. Let's see. All right, and then we finally test. Trigger. Ping. Down to 6. And there you go. That's it. That's how you play the deck, everybody. They're obviously down to 1, but there's no way. Of course, Sparky's going to come back from this. All right. We will decline. Not a big deal. You already have a big swing you can do right here anyway. And also, remember, Maestro's Charm also can also make them lose 3 life. We gain 3 life. So we'll just do that. Finish off with the Charm. There you go. Easy, right? That wasn't too bad. Hope you enjoyed that, everybody. Go ahead and give a shout out in the comments below. If you've made it this far into the video, you are my true fiery friends. And for that, if you are here, you'll be rewarded by showing you a full upgraded version of the deck. So as you can see right now, the good news about this deck is you don't really need to change anything much in the main deck to get any other super crazy powerful upgrades. The biggest upgrades, of course, is, no surprise, the land base. The land base for a tricolor deck can get very tricky, but if you've noticed already when we looked at the actual percentage and the averages here, everything is mostly even across the board with slightly less towards swamps. So you can mostly keep everything as even as possible if you like to. You actually don't even need to get a full copy of Xander's Lounge, but if you want to, there's perfectly no reason why you shouldn't. It's up to you how you want to do it. But if you're trying to get them in a prioritized order, go with, of course, the Shock Lance first, but also the Pathway Lance are perfectly acceptable as well. I would still recommend at least get one of each of the basics just in case if you get Field of Ruin yourself. And again, this is personal preference. I like having a copy of Otawara Soaring City just to mount something in a pinch if I absolutely need to. And Den of the Bugbear, if you get all of your stuff blown up, at the very least, this can create a couple extra tokens for you to help keep your engine running in this deck. As far as the upgrades to your actual sideboard, not really much also as well. You could just get some Thoughtseize, but also, again, Duress is perfectly acceptable. Don't feel like this is an absolute requirement. This is just a suggestion. And as for the one-ofs, honestly, swap out any of the one-ofs in this deck, what I mentioned earlier in the video, depending on what the meta is currently going through. There's a lot more flexibility here than you think. And again, if anything else pops up, be sure to leave a comment below, and I would love to hear from you. And there you have it, everybody. That is Maestros Tokens for you, a budget go-wide token strategy that completely is flipping the expectations of what you think out of colors like this. I know right now with Streets of New Capenna out, everyone's trying to play around with the Cabaretti, and don't get me wrong, there's also a couple decks that I want to play with this, but one thing that I really loved about this whole deck that I was putting together was, long story short, I like when sometimes you could twist strategies and do something that most people don't expect out of certain colors. So I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I have a lot of fun with this deck. I don't expect to get too many wins out of it if I play this on ranked, but it's definitely fun when it goes off. And again, if you are a fan of this kind of content, you already know what to do. Just make sure to give a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. See all of these kinds of deck techs, gameplay footage out there of experimental stuff we keep playing around with, and so much more. I really do appreciate when people get to see my content, and I'm really happy for those of you who stuck into this, watching this whole thing go down. But in any case, thanks again for watching, everyone. And just remember that no matter what you do play in the game of life, always be sure to burn bright. Later.